I want to tell you a story that happened to me when I was young. A story that has haunted me for years. One that has never given me any answers, only questions. And every time I think about it, the questions multiply. I was 18. I lived in a small town called Ashwood, hidden deep in the endless forests of Ohio. A place where summer nights smelled of pine resin, and the silence was so heavy you could hear your own heartbeat. At that time, I worked as a caretaker at the town cemetery. Strange job for a teenager, I know. My friends used to joke, "So, how's work? Any complaints from your clients?" I didn't mind. My duties were simple. Look after the graves, file paperwork, assign new plots, help with burials. Nothing difficult. And the dead never complained. Why did I take that job? 2 reasons. First, money. At 18, every paycheck feels like a fortune. And second, it was my inheritance, in a way. My grandfather had spent his entire life tending that cemetery. Even after retirement, he came back every day as if he couldn't part with the shadows he knew so well. When he died, he was buried there, among the stones he had cared for. He had raised me, replaced the parents I never knew. But there was someone else in Ashwood, someone who made the town even darker. People called him simply Freak. No one knew his real name. No one wanted to. He was short, thin, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. He had moved into a decaying house on the edge of town, claiming it once belonged to his grandmother. After his mother died, he lived there alone. His habits turned him into an outcast. He walked only at night. People saw him talking to animals, dogs, cows, even chickens. Sometimes he was caught peering into windows, always giving himself away with some clumsy noise. Most just pitied him, thinking he was slow-witted, harmless. But one sweltering July afternoon, I woke to the sound of crunching branches. At first I thought it was the wind, but no, steady footsteps. Through the window of the caretaker's hut, I saw him. Freak was moving along a narrow path toward the far corner of the cemetery, where the oldest graves leaned like rotting teeth in overgrown weeds. He stopped before one crooked headstone, bowed his head, and began to whisper. Through my binoculars, I saw his lips moving, his expression intent, almost reverent. He was speaking, not to people, not to animals, to the dead. Curiosity pulled me closer. I followed the trampled path, a path I swear had never been there before. When I reached him, he flinched, startled, then forced a crooked smile. "Oh, you scared me," he said softly. "Sorry, didn't mean to." "Someone buried here?" I asked, pointing at the grave. "My grandmother," he whispered. "Nobody liked her. She didn't like anyone either. She was greedy, strange. I've never seen you here before." "I usually come at night," he admitted, his eyes darting away. "At night? You're here after dark?" "Yes." His voice grew almost dreamy. "There's a lot of black power here. It grows stronger in the dark, and I need it. If I'm lucky, I can fix everything." "Fix? What?" I asked, my mouth suddenly dry. "The mistakes my grandmother made. She took too much with her." That was all he said, before falling back into his mumbling, staring at the headstone as if I no longer existed. I left him there, but his words echoed in my head for the rest of the day. Black power, fixing mistakes. I told myself he was simply insane, but the next morning, everything changed. On my rounds, I found several graves torn open. The earth was fresh, the wood splintered. Empty coffins. Cold sweat ran down my back. Vandalism, I thought. But who would steal corpses? And then I remembered Freak's whisper. His talk of black power. Of fixing things. That same day, I went to Sheriff George Matthews, a broad man with a belly that barely fit behind his old desk. He listened, jotting notes, coughing occasionally. Finally, he leaned back and grunted. Knew that Creep would pull something one day. Good work, son. Town won't forget this. But by evening, Freak was back home, free. The sheriff had questioned him and let him go. That night, they assigned another watchman to the cemetery. Old Paul Ignatius, half-deaf and reeking of whiskey. He wasn't much use. He fell asleep before midnight, and at dawn, when he stepped outside, he screamed himself hoarse. Nearly every grave in Ashwood had been torn open. Coffins split, bodies gone. But the real horror wasn't in the cemetery. The town woke not to roosters, but to dogs. Every dog howling, barking, losing its mind. I stumbled to the window, still half asleep, and froze. On my porch stood my grandfather. His skin was darker, cracked like parched soil, his face more withered. Yet it was him. His empty gaze met mine, and then he smiled. Golden crowns glinted in the morning sun. I rushed outside. He didn't move. When I embraced him, the smell hit me. Damp earth mixed with old spice, the same cologne they had doused him in before his funeral. That morning, the dead returned to Ashwood. They came home, sat at tables. Some never spoke, only stared. Others, after days of silence, began to talk again, in voices muffled as though carried up from underground. No one understood what was happening. Soldiers, scientists, reporters flooded the town. They dug, tested, interviewed. They found nothing, and people fled. Families packed what they could and ran. Houses were abandoned overnight. I left too. I couldn't live under the same roof as someone I loved. Who should have stayed in the ground? And Freak? He vanished that same morning. His house was empty, stripped bare. No clothes, no furniture, no trace he had ever lived there. Sometimes, late at night, I hear his whisper again. About the Black Power, about fixing things, and I wonder, what if he did fix it? What if we're not really alive anymore? What if all of Ashwood is nothing but the shadows of the dead?